On this edition of Southern Newsweek, Dunedin is welcoming in a new mayor as one-term councillor Jules Raddick takes home a landslide victory. Sir Tim Shadbolt is no longer Invercargill's mayor, the 27-year leadership thwarted by his former deputy, Nobby Clark. And farmers around the south say a new emissions policy announced by government will negatively impact the industry. Kia ora, good evening, I'm Hannah Wilkins. The political winds of change are blowing strongly across the country, with more right-wing candidates replacing those on the left side of the ledger. The story is the same in Dunedin, where Green Party-backed Mayor Aaron Hawkins has been unseated by a one-term councillor.
New Dunedin Mayor Jules Raddick celebrating his landslide victory. The one-term councillor achieved an overwhelming win over the weekend, unseating the former Mayor Aaron Hawkins comfortably. The new mayor promising change to the city, with the George Street redevelopment firmly in his sight.
And we'll certainly have a review as far as the future goes, because the lack of flexibility in what has been installed already is of grave concern.
As the results rolled in, it became apparent Raddick was going to secure the win easily, with the city's mayor-elect recording more than 20,000 votes, doubling the total of outgoing Mayor Hawkins. The former mayor didn't put his name forward for council, which will see him leaving office. Raddick is part of the Team Dunedin group and says he felt a degree of serenity when the results came in on Saturday. He says he's looking forward to getting a team together so councillors can get to work.
Well, I'm very excited to have new ones on board, and I'm fascinated to see an old face back, but I would have to say Bill Ackland spoke extremely well on the campaign trail. 4
of Jules Raddick's Team Dunedin running mates have been voted in. The new council will come together for their first meeting at the end of the month. In Dunedin, the South today.
4 brand new councillors are joining Dunedin's Mayor-elect Jules Raddick for an inauguration ceremony later this month. The group met informally for the first time since the election was called, and the mood was upbeat and optimistic.
You got me through.
From campaign rivals to new colleagues, 4 fresh faces for the Dunedin City Council, meeting for the first time since results were announced. A mix of independent candidates and those on the Team Dunedin ticket, all looking forward to working together with the new Mayor-elect Jules Raddick and returning member Sophie Barker. For Independent Councillor Cherry Lucas, the win is a culmination of a lot of hard work in the community.
I didn't have, a party or, a grouping behind me, and I haven't stood for council before, I haven't been on the community board before, so to get in on my first time, I'm really delighted.
For Brent Wetherall, who ran on the Team Dunedin ticket, victory is very much a case of team effort, team reward.
We were part of a team. I would have liked to have seen a few more of our team on board, but at the end of the day, there's been a vote for change.
The new councillors agreeing there's a lot of challenges and hard work to come over the next 3 years.
I think life shrinks and expands in proportion to one's courage, so here we go.
The group will be getting together again later this month for the inaugural council meeting. In Dunedin, the South today.
Invercargill is getting a new leader for the first time in 27 years as Sir Tim Shadbolt hands over the mayoral chains to Nobby Clark. Shadbolt's stunned by the electoral result, taking his time to reflect on some of the highlights before planning his next move.
From humble concrete contractor to New Zealand's longest serving and most recognisable mayor. Sir Tim expressing surprise at this week's results, which will see him relinquishing the mayoralty and leaving council behind.
No, I'm still in a state of shock. I can't believe what's happened.
Shadbolt's best known for going the extra mile for publicity, doing a lot to raise the profile of New Zealand's southernmost city.
Politics, but politics with humour.
But a series of independent reports released last year pointed to a leadership void at the council, suggesting trouble was brewing behind the public profile. Invercargill's new mayor-in-waiting and former Shadbolt deputy, Nobby Clark, says the city is facing a range of pressing issues.
And we need leadership. You can't just be a celebrity frontman.
Clark is sceptical about Shadbolt's future with the city.
He's just a man that needs to retire now, enjoys retirement.
Clark is looking to address a range of issues, including recycling workers' job security and the new Museums Commission. In Invercargill, the South today.
The dust has barely settled on the 2022 local body elections, with some results still too close to call. Newcomers and returning mayors around the south are now putting the campaigning behind them to look at what's ahead.
Some familiar faces, some surprise upsets, and a couple of photo finishes. Towns and cities across the South Island are welcoming in their mayors, new and old. In Queenstown Lakes District, one-term councillor Glenn Lewis takes the place of outgoing mayor Jim Bolt. Lewis says there's a challenging 3 years ahead.
So the big ones is the three reforms that local government's facing. So it's 3 waters, the national planning changes, and obviously the local government, the review of local government.
In Invercargill, Nobby Clark unseated New Zealand's longest-standing mayor, Sir Tim Shadbolt, who had the job for almost 3 decades. Gary Kirshner is back for a 4th term in Waitaki, but despite a landslide victory, he says it's been far from easy.
And that's one of the things that I've been hearing around the country, is that this has just been a very unusual election.
Clutha Mayor Brian Cadogan clinched his 5th consecutive term with a healthy majority, receiving the good news on his birthday, but says the 3 waters policy will cause issues. Meanwhile, his brother Tim Cadogan had an easier race, remaining Central Otago's mayor after a campaign which saw him run uncontested.
For democracy and for the whole process, I'm not sure it's a really good thing that the top job isn't challenged.
Meanwhile, results are still too close to call in Gore and Southland. 23-year-old Ben Bell is leading the Gore race by the smallest of margins, and less than 50 votes separate the top 3 candidates in Southland, with Rob Scott narrowly ahead. Both races will be decided by special votes, with results expected to be announced tomorrow. Across the South Today.
Farmers say a world-first scheme that'll see them pay for emissions by 2025 will rip the guts out of small-town New Zealand. The government announced this week what it's calling a consultation document, which would see the agricultural industry pay for farm-related emissions.
A controversial policy to make New Zealand reduce its carbon emissions. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, flanked by Green Party co-leader James Shaw and Agriculture Minister Damien O'Connor, as they announced the launch of Te Tātai Utu o Ngā Tukuna Ahu Whenua.
Here we have a proposal to make our farmers not only the best in the world, but the best for the world. That has the potential to unlock an emerging and significant price premium for climate-friendly agricultural products and boost our export brand.
If adopted, the consultation document will see the government control the amount of levies farmers pay, rather than have them set by the rural sector. The system of farmgate pricing has been worked on since 2019, after calls from the sector to have an emissions pricing system which rewards climate-friendly farmers. Federated Farmers National President Andrew Hoggard has strongly opposed the plan. He says it rips the guts out of small-town New Zealand. He says it will see sheep and beef farms converted into trees. The government is looking to reduce methane emissions by New Zealand, with a net zero emissions target set for 2050. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Thousands of university staff around the country walked off the job this week in their first strike in 20 years. Tertiary education union members at 8 universities took the coordinated action, arguing their case for better wages.
Sustenance at a campus soup kitchen before angry Canterbury University staff marched on the Vice-Chancellor's office.
Your Vice-Chancellor is not offering enough money.
Tertiary education union teams are negotiating 18 collective agreements on behalf of their 7,000 members.
I find it very hard to look at staff and see that they're struggling to pay their bills, and it doesn't matter who you are. You're working at a university and you're not being paid what you're worth.
Staff are asking for an 8% pay increase over a 1-year term to keep up with the consumer price index.
What do we want? Fair pay! When do we want it? Now!
Moore says she won't rule out any more strike action.
We are keen to get back into bargaining, and we're very keen to get an improved offer and get something better for our members.
Union members will wear black on Monday to begin a further week of action. In Christchurch, the South Today.
Still to come on this edition of Southern Newsweek, a 21-year-old is joining the Otago Regional Council, making them one of the youngest councillors in the country. And the Invercargill Central Mall development is celebrating its first 3 months of successful trading. Tēnā koe, welcome back. The Otago Regional Council welcomes a fresh face as the youngest member is set to join this term.
21-year-old Elliot Weir was voted into council over the weekend and says younger voters turned out for their campaign. Weir identifies as they/them and says they're part of the most progressive Otago Regional Council ever.
Best, I just want to do what's best for every person in the region and what's best for our land and our water and people.
They are setting their sights on the management of land and water sustainability, along with a more reliable bus service. In Dunedin, the South Today.
One of the most advanced wastewater treatment plants in the country is finally starting pumping this month. The multi-million-dollar upgrade is expected to finally solve Te Ano's wastewater woes.
Filtering Te Ano's waste and transforming it into clean water. This new wastewater treatment plant filters sewage through banks of high-tech micromembranes, then pipes the resulting water to a field to be discharged underground.
This is one of the most advanced plants in the country now.
The Southland District Council say it's proud to be bringing the originally scoped $27 million project home on time and under budget. The project team says the water's almost good enough to drink.
So it takes what was semi-raw sewage and brings it into a clear, almost drinking water quality.
Manapuri locals objected to a previous design, which could have seen treated sewage discharged above ground. Council say the new below-ground design gained community agreement. The council says it's important to keep locals involved in the process.
A long process in it, but a very good result, and it's been a real pleasure to see the acknowledgement of the community as well as the team that have built it.
The plant's builders say they've designed an easily upgradable facility to handle future population growth. In Te Anau, the South Today.
The Invercargill Central Mall development is celebrating its first 3 months of successful trading. The retail footprint is now set to expand, with the next stage of shops opening to entice shoppers just in time for Christmas.
From a pile of rubble to a bustling retail mall, the centrepiece of Invercargill's CBD redevelopment has exceeded expectations, welcoming 170,000 shoppers through the door in just 3 months. The shopping centre's manager says the new development is fitting comfortably into Invercargill's retail landscape.
You know, Invercargill is definitely growing and this is a really big part of it, but people feel really connected to it because we're all from Southland and it's here for us.
Opening stores while construction is still underway has its complications, but Mooney says it's been a success, with some shops struggling to keep up with demand. The complicated multi-stage development is now set to expand again, with new shops and food stores set to open in November.
And within that we'll have places like Hallensteins and Lavisa and Max and Barker's, Starbucks, a number of little food retailers as well.
The final stage of the development is on track to open in February 2023. In Invercargill, the South Today.
A big funding boost is in store for the multi-million-dollar redevelopment of Canterbury Museum. Finance Associate Minister Megan Woods announcing this week a $25 million one-off grant, hoping to secure the building's future.
Canterbury Museum is getting a seismic boost from the government. An ambitious $205 million project to redevelop the museum at its Rolleston Avenue site will see it closed to the public for up to 5 years. The museum is receiving a $25 million grant for base isolation and other seismic strengthening.
Canterbury Museum is not only important for us as a region, it's truly part of our national heritage.
The museum hosts more than 2.3 million objects, valued at more than $1 billion. Staff are currently undertaking the mammoth task of moving those exhibits to a secure off-site warehouse complex by April next year, allowing demolition to begin.
As a Cantabrian, I look forward with anticipation to seeing the museum brought up to the modern, world-class standard it deserves as the South Island's most popular tourist destination.
Canterbury Museum plans to open a pop-up museum in the central city to ensure the public still have access to some of the popular exhibits. The redeveloped museum is scheduled to reopen for business in 2028. In Christchurch, the South Today.
Members of the Cromwell community rolled up their sleeves and got their hands dirty recently. 10,000 native plants were planted on the shore of Lake Dunstan, all in the name of legacy.
Planting trees to future-proof the shores of Lake Dunstan. 10,000 native trees have been planted on the at times arid banks of the lake in an attempt to stem years of erosion. Last year, the Lake Dunstan Charitable Trust received just over $1 million through Land Information New Zealand's Jobs for Nature Fund to undertake landscape restoration over 4 years. More than 100 volunteers turned up to the planting, the largest event of its kind in the area. The planting part of a nationwide effort by conservation group Trees That Count.
This project's interesting in that it's really highly degraded land. To come back here in 10 years' time, we'll see transformational change. And in 100 years' time, there'll be native forest.
Lake Dunstan Charitable Trust Chairman Duncan Faulkner says the event was a true community effort.
There's been an awful lot of excuses over the years as to why improvements haven't been made. But essentially we're using this project as an example to show that it can be done.
Te Tapu o Tāne is a Māori charitable trust which was also involved.
The plants that used to grow here are the white plants that should be here, and we've sort of lost focus of that a little bit.
The project aims to restore native species and improve recreational access to the area. At Lake Dunstan, the South Today.
The Dunedin Arts Festival kicked off this week, bringing in both local and international acts. There's a wide variety of performances set to play out over the course of the festival, with one local story standing out from the rest.
Last-minute rehearsals as the operatic show adds its finishing touches. The Dunedin Arts Festival kicks off tonight with a show tackling a local story hitting the stage. In fact, every performance in the festival features a connection to the city.
Well, the festival is for everyone. It's Dunedin's festival, and we've tried to reflect that in our programming to make sure that everyone is reflected in the shows that we're putting on.
The Strangest of Angels opera has a direct link to Dunedin, the show focusing on local author Janet Frame when she was admitted to Seacliff Psychiatric Hospital in 1945. Director Eleanor Bishop says the small cast of just two gives the performance an intimate feel, with a 15-piece orchestra scoring the opera.
What you feel in your body when you're listening to an orchestra coming at you and these amazing singers coming at you, it's so visceral.
The show is set to play over the next 2 nights at Mayfair Theatre, the rest of the festival continuing throughout the next couple of weeks. In Dunedin, the South Today.
After the break on Southern Newsweek, young actors flocked to Dunedin to show off their Shakespearean skills, and 2 brothers have banded together to buy a historic attraction in Brighton, along with the community's help. Tēnā koe, welcome back. Young actors from all different backgrounds made their way to Dunedin to showcase their Shakespearean skills. The National Shakespeare School's production was hosted at Logan Park recently, with one student not letting his disability hold him back.
Practice makes perfect as students prepare for their scenes. More than 40 thespians from all over the country made it to Dunedin recently to perform scenes they've been workshopping for only a week. The cast is made from students selected from regional competitions, with Shakespeare Globe Centre New Zealand assigning them scenes and lending a hand. But the scene directors are all ex-alumni.
So it is very student-driven, and it's phenomenal what they achieve in that time.
Kyron Andrew is a blind actor and one of the students selected for this workshop. He doesn't let his disability hold him back and says he just needs to map out the stage and have good communication between everyone.
Yeah, like if I've memorised all the lines, all the movements, all the mapping, then it will come out hopefully really good.
Half of the students involved will be selected to do a 2-week workshop at the Globe Theatre in London next year. In Dunedin, the South Today.
A historic Brighton attraction is getting a revamp after new owners purchased the site. 2 brothers have banded together to buy the local boat shed, with hopes of fixing it up and having the public paddling down the creek once again.
Life is but a dream, as one of the new owners of Brighton's boat shed rows gently down the Otokia Creek. Locals Jeff and Philip Wilson have bought the historic attraction with the help of their neighbours. The boat shed has been around since the 1800s and has been out of action a long time.
Just it's such an iconic piece of Brighton, and we just really love to see it up and running again.
Around a dozen people are involved in this venture, with the decision to buy the boat shed made over friendly neighbourhood beers. Philip is a qualified boat builder and is eager to repair the boats. He's also looking forward to the public being back on the creek.
Yeah, everyone I've talked to has been real supportive, real keen to see it open. It's just quite an iconic building itself, and just good to tidy it up and get it up and running.
The pair plan to sell a range of clothing alongside selling and loaning surfboards. Wilson says he hopes to have it all up and running again in time for summer. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Pieces of Dunedin sport history are destined for the tip unless they can find a new home.
These seats used to line the Carisbrook Stadium, but are now in need of a home. Placemakers Carisbrook owner Justin McCready was called up by a regular customer about the seats, which they'd found sitting in a warehouse. McCready says they're a part of sporting history, and that it would be a shame to see them end up at the dump.
So it'd be great in a man shed, or just sitting outside. It'd be great. It'd be great for them to go to a good home and some good rugby fans.
Some of the seats will be placed alongside Carisbrook relics at Placemakers, with the rest being given away over the next few days. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Young winemakers around Central Otago showcased their skills recently, hoping to make a name for themselves. Alexandra hosted the Central Otago Young Winemaker of the Year competition, where aspiring viticulturalists battled it out for the top spot.
Getting the measure of these young winemakers. 8 eager viticulturists entered in the Central Otago Young Winemaker of the Year competition recently, where they were tested on all aspects of winemaking. The contestants showcasing their wine production, taste testing and even marketing ability, with the competition allowing them to sharpen their skills.
It helps the young winemakers focus and study, so it stretches them, it gives them a platform to make a name for themselves, but also it brings the community together.
6 out of 8 of the competitors are female. Grandorge says the industry is seeing an influx of women, with many viewing it as a great career opportunity.
We've always found in Central Otago in particular there seem to be a lot of women entering these competitions, which shows they're really ambitious as well. It's very exciting.
North Cantabrian Georgia Malhopt taking home the crown and will be heading to the national competition in November. In Alexandra, the South Today.
A Wanaka tourism operator and local conservation trust are working together to return a small part of Wanaka back to nature. After 10 years of dedicated planting, a small native forest is now springing up along the lakeshore.
Clearing the weeds to help a forest flourish. The Mount Aspiring lookout at Glendhu Bay is looking a lot greener than it used to, thanks to the effort of these volunteers. Planting started exactly a decade ago and was inspired by a local tour operator who wanted to give something back to the community.
Every person that comes out on a safari with us actually contributes to this project. So 1 trip per person, 1 tree per person.
The Te Kakano Trust Community Nursery provided the native trees for this project, with Trust members delighted to see the locally sourced seedlings slowly taking over the former pasture land.
Now we've got a little forest, which is pretty cool, especially the red beech, because these came from seeds from up the Fernburn.
The Trust say that although it's a lot of hard work keeping the weeds at bay, eventually the forest canopy will spread and natural regeneration will take over. In Wanaka, the South Today.
An unexpected overstayer with a loyal following of school kids is finally heading north. An antique polar bear is part of an auction lot of unusual items destined for a forever home now, and the auctioneer says the rare item will be missed by many.
This stuffed polar bear is making its way north to a new home to join Canterbury Museum's taxidermy collection. The plush but slightly intimidating animal looked a little out of place when it arrived at Proctor's auctioneers.
So this polar bear has been with us for over a year. We've tried selling him a couple of times with no success.
The shop's owners say after failing to sell, the bear became an unexpected attraction for local school kids, some of them taking a keen interest in its movements.
We actually have a few regulars that come in each week to make sure he's still here. but I told them to say their goodbyes last week.
Canterbury Museum eventually buying the taxidermy treasure for its own collection. The polar bear has been loaded into the moving truck and is on its way up north. In Dunedin, the South Today.
That wraps up this edition of Southern Newsweek. For the latest news and videos from the Southern region, head online to odt.co.nz. And you can follow Channel 39 on YouTube to catch our news bulletins on demand. We'll see you again next week. Mā te wā.
Public interest journalism funded through New Zealand On Air.